Hello and welcome to this quick scripting tutorial on properties, what they are and how to use them. So a property is essentially a variable that's associated with a specific script creator. So you'll see that at the start of any of your scripts, you'll see there's this section where it says the name of your script dot properties equals and then parenthesis and then a list of data. In fact, when you first start a script, you probably will only see one and it will be commented out. Essentially what these are variables that you can use throughout your script, but they are also open in the entity editor over here. So if I open the game controller and scroll down to this game script, which is this script here, you'll see that each of these properties, such as welcome message, are have a corresponding entry box over here in the entity editor. And what that means is that I can create multiple versions of these scripts and change these values for each one wherever they are. Let's have a look at an example of that. Here I have this properties example, and you can see there's two identical properties locators here. And we can see that if I add a script, if I add this properties example script to these, then you can see that whilst they have the same values to begin with, if I change one of them, it won't change the other one, which means I can make these very, very easily reusable. And in fact, this is really useful for not just within this one game, but also if I put these scripts in packages, I can reuse them in other games. And by using properties, I'm making much easier to reuse. Now let's have a look at how we actually describe each of these properties. Any property in our script will name, and this is the way that we set the name here, but it's also how we are going to refer to it. You'll see in this script, which is game controller script, game script, you'll see that we can refer to a property by doing self.properties and then the name of the property there. So min players to play is one of these here, players to play there. So that refers to that property. So now, wherever this property is used in the script itself, will be replaced with whatever this property has stored. So whatever is written in the entity editor for that specific property. Min players to play is just there. So it's 1. This will be replaced by 1 in the game in runtime. So rather than us writing the literal number 1 in our script where we want to use that 1, we can now really easily just say, oh, I want to have more players. There needs to be more than one player in my game. And we can do it without having to touch our code. That's the real power of property, is not having to touch your code to make it reusable, not having to and paste scripts into new script files, and writing functionality once, ideally, and then opening out a load of properties so that you can very quickly customize and tweak that depending on the situation scripting. So we have a name. We also will always set the type of the property, and there are several different primitive types we can use: Boolean, number, and string, which are our basic types of data that most other types of data are essentially down to. But there are basic types of data. We also have specific types of data that are relevant to only Creator. For example, the entity or the event types. And so these entities and events, an entity will refer to any specific entity game. And in the entity editor, when you use the type entity, you'll see that rather than having a box to enter numbers or a time or a name, it gives you a drop down and it lets you choose one of the entities in your game. You can also drag and drop that an entity from the hierarchy here into that property if it's set to entity. Another type is the event type. This allows us to call a function on another script that belongs to another entity in our game. So this is a really powerful way of scripts talking to each other without relying on each other for that communication. So this script, game script, doesn't need to know what what entities it's talking to here. It just needs to know what events to fire to them. So that's the event type. Another really, really useful type is the asset type. But if we have a look at the properties example here, I'm using a sound asset, which is just a type of asset. And in the entity editor, when you use the sound asset, it gives you a drop down and you can select one of the sound assets. You could also do things like effect asset or even just asset, and that will let you choose an asset simply by dragging and dropping from our library. That could be a voxel, it could be anything. So you can use assets in that way. Another really important thing that you need to know about properties is the container attribute. And the container attribute is either going to be array or you're not going to use it essentially at the moment. So the array for setting container to array will make it so that we can store multiple things in our property over here. Let's change this back to sound asset. And you can see now we have the ability to store 4 sounds in our bonus score. If we want to refer to that, we can do self.property.bonus scores, and we can refer to them using square brackets and then the number of the items. So 1, 2, 3, or 4. Notice that if you program in other languages, you might find that arrays start from 0. In Lua, arrays start from 1. So just bear that in mind that the first item in the array is going to be at position 1. If you want to know how many items there are in the array, that's simply preceding that with a hash. So that's the array container. And that's the types of data. There are more attributes you can add to your properties. You can find the majority of those by navigating to this tutorial on tutorials.creator.com. You scroll down to the scripting guides and then find the adding editor properties to Creator Scripts here. You can find all of the different property options you've got here, or the attributes, and the different types of data you can store in there, as well as some more detail on how to set all of that up. So hopefully this tutorial has been useful and you've got to grips with the simple idea of using properties to make your scripts more reusable, more user-friendly, more meaningful in your actual code as well. And I really look forward to seeing what you make with different properties and seeing some of the packages that are out there and how they use properties in a really good way. And I look forward to seeing you in Creator.